Hey everybody, it's Ron again over at Becoming Enlightened Together. So we're doing a weekly rune pull. So we're going to look at the overall energy for the entire week and then each day in advance. The advanced readings that we do today will become the past energies for each following day as we progress. So in other words, when I pull today's energy for Monday, tomorrow's Monday reading will be the past, okay? That will be the past energy for Monday, and so on and so forth, to give you some idea how I'm doing this. Now, this is unorthodox. I don't have any precedent for doing daily readings, let alone weekly readings, in terms of runes. They were generally done at festivals. They were generally done when a village, for example, needed an answer from the gods immediately about something, or festivals, um, and during different periods of lunar cycles, for example. But nothing that really talks about doing it in a daily or a weekly type of thing. I'm kind of like if you will, pioneering my own version of this form of divination, marrying it together with all the information that I'm able to acquire, and making it into a working system. It's still a work in progress. I'm still not as proficient at it as I would like to be as of yet, but with time, I know and I'm confident that I'll get there. So, having said all of that, hello everybody, first off and foremost. I hope you guys all had a wonderful previous week. As the overall energy for the collective, anyway, was very, very good. Very, very few hurdles that we were, um, warned about. The usual daily types of things that we have, or even weekly types of things, but nothing major. It did warn us a few times about those in our life that we would classify as being of the lower vibrational, maybe even karmic, if you want to give it a title. Those who are not taking this particular lifetime seriously, and at least in their pursuit of becoming more enlightened, better overall people, and so on. They're just living day to day, moment to moment, and more or less subject to their own desires and baser instincts. Okay, and we are all, as a collective, learning how to overcome and to not only conquer but to control our so-called dark side, and so we can use it in transmutation to that something that is very positive. Okay. All right. So overall energy for the week this week is Kenaz. Kenaz in the upright. Now this is one I actually have tattooed on my body, and I have 3 of them so far. I'm going to get several more. But Kenaz right here next to Odin's rune and Zeus. And it talks about creativity, but it also talks about torch and beacon, that light bulb moment, that inspirational moment, that moment of creativity or an answer to a long sought after question. So it's vision, inspiration, creativity. It even talks about technical abilities and so on. If you're good with your hands, you're a fixer, whether it's automotive or some type of appliance at home, or maybe the home itself, or whatever the case may be. Okay, maybe you make jewelry, or you're good in the kitchen, whatever the case may be. We all have our talents. And I hope that you're all figuring out what those are, where your passion is, what you're good at, and everything else. That's what you're supposed to be doing, okay? Or at least that's one of the things you're supposed to be doing. All right, so it also talks about clarity. It talks about, in other words, the power of light versus nighttime obscurity. It talks about new strength at the present, energy, the power to, change one's destiny, so to speak. It also talks about rapport, passion, and sexuality, or sexual love. So, as I stated yesterday in the reading that closed out last week, basically they are not shy at all about the physical intimacy and so on that they share. And I think they had a very healthy and balanced approach to it. I really do. And they treated their women as many ways very, very much an equal. And there are stories, of course, of female warriors, within their ranks, those who own property and everything else. Of course, we hear about Lagartha, the Great Shield Maiden, and everything else, or Lagratha, however it's actually pronounced, I don't know. But if you ever saw the series Vikings, you know who I'm talking about. She was the wife of Ragnar Lothbrok, who was another very, very famous real-life Viking. But the stories, of course, being that they didn't really write them down per se, not in a historical sense like the Romans were known to do, and the Greeks and others. So we get our information along these lines from varied other means, whether they're the Poetic Eddas and, the Have 'em All and places like that in terms of the Nordic writings that we do have. Alright, so that's the overall encompassing energy for the entire week. Now, what we have in terms of today, what we have is Urus. Now, I also have this one tattooed on my chest, but this one is in the reverse. In the upright, it stands for basically the Auruk, which is a very powerful ox that was looked at because of its strength, its vitality, its tenacity, and everything else, and until it was hunted into extinction about 500 years ago. So in the reverse, it talks about quite a bit the opposite of things, whether you're talking about from an emotional, spiritual, or physical, plane of existence. We're talking about being weak-willed, having low energy, in fact, even illnesses, having missed opportunities, obsession, misdirected force, being dominated by others. Maybe you're a people pleaser and you don't see it that way. You think you're doing some kind of good. You convince yourself of it by trying to make everybody happy, but that is not at all what we're here to do. Okay? If you're doing that, then you are not moving in your life's purpose. So you want to rethink that whole thing. And I know if you're empathic in particular, that's something you have to, really go within and allow it to really, resonate before you can make the proper moves in respect to that. But you don't want to be a people pleaser. You want to stand firm on your own beliefs, convictions, and everything else, and what's right, not what is going to please this person and that person or whatever. Okay? That actually makes you fall into the weaker category, not the more powerful or stronger one. Now, what else does it talk about Urus in the reverse? It talks about inconsistencies, lust, brutality, violence, ignorance, rashness, callousness, just about anything where you can more or less classify as low vibrational, no control whatsoever of your own person, okay? Your emotions control you completely. That's what Urus in the reverse basically means, okay? So I hope that nobody in the collective has fallen back into that particular way of living. That means you have to fight your way back out of that paper bag, so to speak, to get back on the straight and narrow, to do that which is right, Now, for Monday, also another very powerful rune, but it too is in the reverse. This is Thor's mighty rune, Thurisaz. And Thurisaz in the reverse. So it does, again, speak about some very low vibrational qualities, traits, and attributes. Even though it's Thor's mighty rune, in the reverse, it's a shadow side. So it talks about foolhardiness and stubbornness. Someone that does not heed advice. Somebody who likes to get into all types of folly, danger. Somebody who is basically themselves defenseless. Somebody who's very compulsive. Maybe somebody who is prone to betray or to be betrayed. Somebody who's dull. Somebody who's, basically an evil person. A bad person all around. It talks about malice and hatred and torments, spite, a liar, a rapist. So any negative quality, again, from being just somebody who's just weak-willed all the way to the, to the pinnacle. I mean, it doesn't say murder, but pretty much everything leading up to that, taking, your own passions and overriding the will of any other human being. It's very, very negative. And again, I hope this isn't pertaining to the collective, but it is something you have to be aware of, or I wouldn't be talking about it. Now, Tuesday's energy is one that we saw quite a bit last week. This is Yara, and this time Yara is in the upright. Now, this talks about the year, seasons, harvests, cycles, the fruits of your earlier efforts being realized. So it talks also about happiness and peace, truth, breakthroughs in stagnation, hopes and expectations, peace and prosperity, of course, success, and that basically everything changes in its own time, or as those within the Judeo-Christian perspective, they would say God's timing, not yours. Okay, so be patient, and I found that to be extremely true in my own journey. Okay, so patience is very much a virtue. Again, something else that I've heard many times, and until I've had to live it, did I not really fully grasp its meaning. Now, in terms of Wednesday's energy, we have another very powerful rune, and it too is in the upright. It's Algis. And again, Algis stands for defense, protection, and things of that nature. It talks about aspirations, optimism, protection, acting as a shield, a urge to protect yourself and others from whatever is, basically, at odds with you. It talks about defense, even the warding off of evil itself. It's used in many, amulets and in, some type of magical connotations and so on to ward off evil spirits, things of that nature. It's basically having a connection with the gods, basically listening to one's intuition. And it talks about keeping hold of your success at this time. Okay, so that is Wednesday's energy. Now Thursday we take another spin for the negative with Ewas. Ewas in the reverse. This is their letter E. Okay, looks like a W when it's in the reverse. Basically, it stands for long journeys, and for me personally, it certainly has been a very, very long journey. In fact, we're closing out a 10 to 15 year cycle right now, presently. So for those of you who have been going through it, literally, just problem after problem, or if you will, situation after situation, even though you may not have had anything whatsoever to do with it or cause any of these things, but they were placed upon you by higher, if you will, powers or other people in your life or people who you may have been responsible for in some way. That is finally coming to a close. It's the end of a very long and difficult cycle. So that's what it talks about. It talks about sudden changes, and the changes being actually craved. I know I have for the longest time. But it also talks about restlessness and maybe even reckless haste. So take your time and think things through before reacting if you're given that opportunity. Now, if you have to respond, hopefully through meditation and just, actually coming to terms with all the previous circumstances you've had to overcome to get to this point as the collective ending this cycle, you will make the right decision. Always trust your intuition, okay? So it talks about perhaps mistrust, disharmony, and maybe even betrayal. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing the betraying, but somebody is basically, betraying somebody. So you may be the one being betrayed. You may be the one who basically is experiencing the disloyalty from another human being in your lifetime. And I apologize to you for that. I know how harsh that can be, how difficult it is to overcome, especially if it's a loved one. Now, Friday's energy is, again, the weekly energy. It's Kenaz, but this time, unfortunately, Kenaz is in the reverse. So instead of the creativity and things of that nature, we're talking about terminations of something coming to an end, a close, maybe something we didn't want to end, facing up to one's own death. Talks about giving up the old, possibly again, and this is the third time we've seen it, disease. It talks about a breakup, perhaps if you were in a long-term situationship or whatever the case may be, or perhaps even a marriage. It talks about potential breakups, instability, and of course, anytime you're in the negative energy, you're going to experience lack of creativity. Again, it talks about nakedness, exposure, all things done in secret being revealed. So no more illusions, and no more being able to hold on to false hope. So again, I think I'm referring to the karmics in our lives who are experiencing this, because as our cycle closes, so does theirs. So now Saturday's energy is the god Freyr's rune. It is basically that of Ingwaz. Ing is another name for him. Basically, it talks about, since it's in the reverse, it talks about the marking of both beginnings and endings, the end of a cycle, in other words. It talks about milestones and completions of something. Basically, talks about limits and coming full circle in something. Again, the end of a cycle. It's exactly right. But it also talks about blindness and hopelessness in some cases. So that would go hand in hand with some of the other negative things that we heard in terms of some of these reversals this week. So overall, it's not a bad week, but it's giving us some insights in terms of the positivity that the collective basically is still experiencing or will be experiencing as we get closer and closer to the close of this cycle we've been talking about. And again, also what's going on with some of those that have chosen the other side, if you will, the dark side, the karmic way of living their lives. And, we're all at different places in our journey, as I've stated many times along this path, and we're not to judge, okay? We are here basically to bless where we can, to admonish, to help, wherever we can, but that doesn't mean you are somebody's doormat either, and you are allowed to fight back. There is nothing wrong with that when the line has been crossed or crossed one too many times. All right, so defend yourself. In fact, you do a search up, even from the Judeo-Christian perspective, angels were not just these happy-go-lucky, touchy-feely, all sweet and everything else kind of beings. One angel was reported to taking out tens of thousands of troops, in a single skirmish, and they're capable of doing quite a bit of damage, if they are told to do so. And we are basically in like manner to do all the good that we can, but when faced against an immovable force and one that's coming against you, you have every right to do whatever it takes to defend yourself and those you love. In fact, it's your responsibility to do so. So that's all we have for this week, you guys, and we'll be doing daily readings throughout the week. And as always, I wish you all victory, and I will see you much, much later on, hopefully, in Valhalla. Oh, I got my new Valhalla t-shirt, by the way. See it? Isn't that awesome? I actually got it at Walmart. Don't tell anybody. But anyways, that's it for me. You guys have a blessed rest of the day, and I'll see you probably tomorrow. Okay? God bless.